A lot to get to and touch on Philadelphia 76ers now. I'm Chase Senior. Hope all of you had a great weekend and your weeks are off to a great start as well. Before we get started, make sure you subscribe to the channel for year-round coverage of the Philadelphia 76ers. Starting this channel a while ago, it was awesome for me growing up in the Philadelphia area. Loved Allen Iverson, loved this basketball team growing up. Now to be able to cover them as my professional job, it's great. You know, it would mean a lot to me getting to 10,000 subscribers as well. So lock us in, subscribe today for informative, consistent, and entertaining Sixers coverage. All right, let's dive in. So the Sixers since December have been one of the hottest teams in the NBA, but when they play against some of the elite teams in the NBA, that's when they become a little bit exposed. Now, they did pass that test against the Memphis Grizzlies on Thursday night. They're down 17 points, and they're able to mount that comeback against one of the top teams in the NBA. And for me, they went into the locker room at halftime in that matchup against Memphis, and they were a little bit mentally wonky, right? And that's my big concern with the Sixers is their lack of mental toughness. But then they lose a game like they did in the fashion against the Boston Celtics in which they lost it with. And some of those questions come back. Can the Sixers beat a team like the Boston Celtics 4 times in a playoff series? And when you look at that game against Boston, this is why it's disheartening, right? The Sixers held Jason Tatum in check all throughout the game until the end of it when he made that really incredible play in which he stopped on a dime. Good defense from DeAnthony Melton, still able to knock down that three. And of course, and in Philadelphia fashion, Joel Embiid's three-quarter court heave went in, but it was after the clock had expired. So the Sixers hold Jason Tatum in check. They get a great Joel Embiid game. They played pretty well, had a 15-point third-quarter lead, and they still lost. Over the course of a playoff series, you might have 1 or 2 of those Jason Tatum clunkers. And how many times is Embiid going up against a guy like Al Horford, who is lighting it up from downtown, who's held him in check? Is Embiid going to be able to drop a performance like that? Probably not often, given the good game planning by a Boston Celtics team that's deep and is very, very good defensively. And they have 2 premier wing players in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. The Sixers, too, are not a good playoff matchup for Boston. I think that the Celtics have more ball handlers. I mean, shoot, they're bringing in some players off the bench who are really, really good. Malcolm Brogdon would start on many other teams across the NBA, and he's their backup point guard. I thought that when the Celtics went with the faster pace, the Sixers struggled to keep up. They struggled to keep up with that aforementioned depth. I think that Boston is better where it really, really matters the most, especially when it comes time to win an NBA championship deep in the playoffs. That's on that wing spot. And the coaching edge. Like Joe Mazzulla, is he going to be able to outcoach Doc Rivers? I'm not sure. Mazzulla is a rookie head coach, but Doc Rivers has consistently come up short time and time again in the playoffs. And the Sixers bench does continue to be a problem. The Celtics bench superior at the Wells Fargo Center on Saturday night, outscoring Philadelphia 27-12. So I thought that the Sixers kind of wore down a little bit. The Celtics were a little bit fresher deep. And can the Sixers continue to just rely on Embiid and Harden to bail them out time and time again when they might get exhausted because their usage rate is so high? Now, the biggest thing that the Sixers need is Tyrese Maxey. So we're going to revisit some of the trade rumors that surfaced with him and whether or not he can turn that corner, because he's turning out to be the biggest X factor for this basketball team. First, though, who would win a playoff series between Boston and Philadelphia? I'm sorry, I'm going Boston. They have had a stranglehold on this Sixers team during my entire lifetime. And then going back to the Larry Bird Celtics, they always beat the Sixers outside of when the Sixers won the championship in 82-83. So let me know down in the comment section below. Also, we have a great deal on this Joel Embiid City Edition jersey. These are the jerseys that the Sixers wore on Saturday night in front of a nationally televised audience. Head to chatsports.com/76city. You use that link so that Fanatics knows that Chat Sports sent you. You can get hooked up with this dope Joel Embiid jersey. Embiid, speaking of him, he was awesome. 41 points, 12 boards, and 3 blocks. And throughout his career, Al Horford has played stellar defense against him. But as Al Horford gets a little bit older and Embiid is at the peak of his powers, you could see that Embiid was able to make some adjustments that he didn't make previously in some of those other matchups against Al Horford. And obviously, Embiid just has that physically overpowering nature to his game where, yes, he's very good at drawing fouls, but he's so difficult to defend. As I've said, he's kind of the closest thing physically to Shaq that we've seen since the early 2000s, 40, 12, and 3. And I understand that Nikola Jokic is putting up stellar all-around numbers, but is he having the impact that Joel Embiid is having defensively? I think not. Embiid, what's really unfortunate, he hit that little bunny late in the game on that little fadeaway from midway range. And then he also had that huge block, I think, after that Maxey layup to put the Sixers ahead. And you're like, okay, here he comes again, like he did against Memphis, like he's done a couple of times this year, where he makes a statement that, yes, I am the most valuable player. Unfortunately, his performance was squandered. As for Harden, I was fine with the performance. It wasn't the most efficient. And come playoff time, you already know, it's guaranteed, it's inevitable that he's going to have a playoff no-show that makes you scratch your head, because literally every season that he's been in the playoffs, he's had this type of postseason clunker that just crushes your morale and crushes the morale of the entire fan base. Does he ever show any intensity? Like, that's a good nature about him. He's always kind of cool, calm, and collected, but I need him to get fired up at some point. And at some point, he needs to define what has been somewhat of a frustrating playoff career for him and have that playoff-defining moment. But as I alluded to a little bit earlier, the biggest key for the Sixers' success, it's Tyrese Maxey. Tyrese Maxey needs to step up for this basketball team. I think it's time for Doc Rivers to end the experiment of having Tyrese Maxey come in off the bench in that Jordan Poole type of role and just start Tyrese Maxey and move DeAnthony Melton to the bench. Because ever since Maxey has become a consistent bench scorer and bench option, his numbers have gone down. He didn't look like a playoff-ready player on Saturday night, and it seems like he's lacking from confidence. And that's really concerning because the last 2 years, the first 2 years of his career, Tyrese Maxey was exuding with confidence, and now he seems to be missing it. The Sixers will only go as far as Tyrese Maxey can take them. You can't count on Tobias Harris night in and night out to play high-level basketball. You can't just rely on Joel Embiid and James Harden to carry you every single night. Tyrese Maxey has to be the third pillar for this team if they want to truly be championship contenders. And that's why Joel Embiid went up to Maxey after that Celtics loss and said, we need you to be more aggressive. And going back to that point about what has happened to Maxey since he came off of that injury and he's been relegated to the bench, his numbers have gone down. I mean, he starts off October putting up great numbers, 37 minutes per night, 23 points per game. In November, the minutes go down and his point production goes down by about a point, as this is a great breakdown here from Sean Bernard. January, you see the difference between October and January. October, he's getting 37 minutes per night. In January, 31.9, and for the first time all year, he goes below 20 points per game, and then the numbers continue to go down in the month of February. He's getting 8 less minutes than he was in October, and he's the young spark that this team needs. February, only 15.8 points per game, and that lack of confidence in the three-point stroke hasn't been the same. When he started the season, he was knocking down like 44% of his three-point opportunities. So you go back to that conversation where I always defended Maxey, and I was always very bullish on him. Should the Sixers have traded him for a more high-level player, a bona fide superstar? Maxey has all-star potential, potential superstar potential. But is he ready to seize that role right now? Well, as a bench player, I don't think he is. I think he's better suited as a starter. Then maybe you can use DeAnthony Melton as more of that heat seeker coming in off the bench, whereas him as a starter, he's only taking shots here and there and is used more so as a defender. So I'm as bullish on Tyrese Maxey as anybody. I love the kid. I voiced here on the channel time and time again. He's Philadelphia's son. Do not trade him away, Daryl Morey. He could be a part of this team trying to get past that second round for the first time since 2001, but he needs to be better. He needs to lock in on his inner confidence, but for Doc Rivers, I think it's time to end that experiment of bring him in off the bench. And let's round out with a couple more thoughts here. Can this team get past the second round? Look, in the first round, they're probably going to get the 2 or 3 seed. They're going to win that playoff series. In the second round, though, if they're in, let's say, that 2-3 matchup and they're playing the Milwaukee Bucks, that is Joel Embiid legacy series type of talk right there. And can the Sixers in a 7-game series beat the Bucks? Can they lock down Giannis over the course of that series? Jrue Holiday is probably the best defensive point guard in the NBA. Will he have the clamps on James Harden? That, too, a very, very difficult matchup. My concern, it's the lack of mental toughness for the Sixers. I've lived and died with this point over the last 4 or 5 years. It hasn't failed me or done me wrong yet. I wish that I was wrong. But now the Sixers lose that game against Boston, in which they did a lot well. Jason Tatum was cold. He had an off game. Joel Embiid goes off. You have the Wells Fargo Center rocking, and now they go into the playoffs with the quarter of the season left to go, with it in their mind, shoot, we can't beat Boston, man. Everything that we do, they have an answer for, and the Sixers so far have lost all 3 games to the Boston Celtics. So, what do you think? How far will this team go? I'm hoping, I'm praying it's an Eastern Conference Finals berth. That would be amazing. I mean, shoot, Phillies make it to the World Series. Eagles make it to the Super Bowl. Union lose on a choke job in the MLS Final. The Sixers, can they finally make it to the Final Four of the NBA? Let's hope so. But right now, I'm a little bit concerned.